Donc, c'est en train de le faire et on y est. Hello everyone, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depending where you are. Welcome to this webinar about Anubis. My name is Maurice. Up here, there's Ricardo. Would say
Hello,
hello.
everybody. Looking forward.
So the thing is that what we want to do is to present you as in an easiest way as possible Anubis, because it does many things, but it does many things on a very easy way. But as it does a few, we need a bit of time to explain you all what it does. First of all, to explain you a little bit how the setup is. So I have an Anubis in front of me here. Ricardo has one too. The idea is, first of all, we'll explain you a little bit the box, what it is, the I/O, what it makes, and so on. And then you see on your screen that you have in YouTube, you see that you have an emulation of the software, basically an emulation of what you have here on the touch screen. And so this is basically a software emulation, so that we can easily show you what's going on through the menus and so on and so on, and so that we can guide you through the possibilities. And then we're gonna go back and forth with Ricardo and talk about it. So let's start. Um, Anubis, first of all, is a little neat device, and I'm gonna perhaps make my camera a little bit bigger so that you can see it a little bit better. There we go. Good. And yes, one thing I forgot to mention, if you have, oh, my mic is popping. Thank you for saying. So it should be better like this, I guess, I hope. It's a little bit lower. Good.
And from my side, it's okay, guys. I
Yeah,
guess it's
I
okay.
hope it is all good. So, to start with, is that my Anubis is a device that is a little neat device that has, first of all, some inputs, some analog inputs, and some analog outputs. Um, okay, so it seems that all microphone is good. I don't know. We have two microphone inputs here. Those microphone inputs, first of all, they can be obviously selected from line to mic and mic to line individually. The microphone range, they are high quality microphone inputs. So the dynamic range of those microphone inputs is up to 137 dB. So you can really use a lot of variety of microphones and don't fiddle around all the time with the mic gain, as you have a lot of range to play with. Then as other inputs, you have on the top here on the front, you have two jack inputs that are line or instrument inputs. So those are line inputs, AD converters, and or high impedance. So you can switch them to high impedance, so you can have an instrument input there. In terms of the outputs, you have two XLR outputs there, line DA outputs, and with the same quality of converters, you have two jack outputs there. So you have four outputs at the rear there. And on the front, we have two headphone jacks there for headphone one, headphone two. But as you have a router behind in here, you can also, for example, route another signal to those outputs if you don't want to have it as a headphone. The typical example would be a 5-1 monitoring device, so that you have output 1, 2, 3, 4, and you would use 5 and 6 for the headphone output, or this one if you want. And if you use all of them, you could do 7.1 if you want, but then obviously you don't have any headphone output if you need one. This is then extensible with another device, but let's keep it here for the moment. Then you have here another jack in and output. This is for a GPI, so in, or a GPO out. So in the idea that you have, for example, a red light when you go on to record, or you could have a switch, a pedal under your foot on which you could enable the talkback, for example, or on which you could cut the microphone or mute the microphone input one, for example, and so on. So you can, there's a little menu, you can decide what action you want to do. This can turn also into a MIDI in and output. So there would be a breakout cable to MIDI. It's either or. Last but not least, until now we have talked about analog in and outputs. And obviously this is now the digital in and output. The digital in and output is basically an Ethernet RG45 and this carries through my audio to the workstation, for example. So I could hook up on a Mac or on a PC with a proper virtual sound card for Azure or for Core Audio, one or the other, and then connect my Anubis to my DAW. And this is very easily done point to point. Obviously, as soon as I want to have more than two devices on my network, I would then add a switch and have several devices on the network. This would allow me, for example, to go from inputs over here and output them onto another device on the network, or have several computers using same inputs or same outputs on the same device. So obviously you can make some more complex installations or workflows, but let's keep it easy for the moment. And this is connected to my computer. One thing very neat also is that I don't know if you can see it properly through the camera, but I have a little DC input. This is for the power supply that comes delivered with the Anubis. And obviously you can power up your device with this little connector, and you have the power supply over here. But as you see, I have nothing connected here. This is because I have a switch connected to my Anubis, and this switch delivers some power over Ethernet. That means that my device is powered up over this cable, so it carries the audio through, but it carries also the power to power up my Anubis device. So it keeps it neat and tidy. Nevertheless, if I want to, I could use this device as well. So at the same time, so I would have redundancy in terms of the power supply. Obviously, if you just have a connection between a computer and the Anubis, as the computer will never be power over Ethernet, at least not today, it might come in the future, but this doesn't exist today, you would need definitely a DC input here. A few other things that are important to say about this device is that you have little holes here on each side. This is basically a one block aluminium device with a plate at the bottom, okay? And the whole aluminium device is cooling down the interior. So there is a fan, I'm gonna come to that in a second inside, but for the moment it's not running this fan. There's just air passing through here, and that cools down, and the box is a little bit warm because the device is cooling itself down with this envelope over this metal box. But there is a ventilation inside. This is for security. It means that if the device is, for example, lying in the sun or in really very hot environment, basically when it comes or reaches 52 degrees Celsius, I don't know how much it makes in Fahrenheit, but it makes quite a lot. Then there's a ventilation for security switching on, protecting the device. But it happened only once to me. It was in the sun. And so it obviously it lied in the sun for a while, and it was protecting my device. Last but not least, very important, you have some microphone stand or microphone wiggle in here, so that you could have, for example, a microphone stand or with an angle, so that you can nicely put it together as for a musician or on a desk or for a post-production environment, whatever it is, but it doesn't need to lie flat on the table. You can also put it that way. Just before handing over to Ricardo, who will explain us a little bit more about the microphones, I just wanted to explain you briefly the way you then manipulate your device. You see that you have, on this side, you have 5 soft knobs. Those soft knobs basically allow you to select speaker sets, phones, and this triangle is basically the merging menu. And as you can understand, we will have the same representation on the screen with the web app to be able to explain how it does or what works. We have a touchscreen, so this is all touchscreen here. We have a knob. With this knob, you will be able, for example, to increase, decrease the volume, the gain, but also to walk through certain configurations. And then you have a speaker main cut or mute, and you have a talkback. This talkback here button allows me to, of course, if I want to connect a microphone that makes a talkback, I can, but I don't need particularly to do that because I have a little dot here in between those two soft knobs, and this dot is actually a little hole in which there's a little microphone behind. So I have a little microphone coming with this device already, basically being able to be used as a talkback. So I don't need a talkback microphone if I'm happy to use that one. I hand over to Ricardo, who will explain us a little bit about the very specific design of those microphone inputs.
Thank you, Maurice. You covered pretty much very well everything here. But so we have the Anubis here. It's a very portable the interface, and for those who come who know Horace and Happy, we'll be glad to have something portable. But for those who don't use merging's current interface, this we bring to the market a very small portable interface with the super high quality specification of the merging high-end converter line. So you can now have home or in a professional studio or in broadcasting environment, or anyone can have a very professional device today that can fit in one hand. So with super excellent preamps here, we have what we call the dual circuitry preamps, which is where we stack up two preamps gains per channel. So this topology is the new topology design from merging. And for those interested in having complete details on how the preamps are built, can watch the presentation from a few weeks ago done with Claude Cellier, the president, where we explained the new modules for Horus and Happy, which is the ADA 8S and P. So if you look for that, you will find all the details on the preamps. So basically, we have two combos here, preamps. And then we have at the output here a pair of balanced XLR for the main monitors. We have TRS outputs for the, let's say, B speaker set, so the alternate speakers. We have, as you said, the GPIO or MIDI. We have a small MIDI cable for those interested here. So you can see it's a jack MIDI cable that you can connect directly in the MIDI in or out. And then from there, you can easily connect, I should go like that, but from there, you can easily connect another MIDI cable to your MIDI devices. So we have, it's a special connectivity, but you can also build your cable if you wish to do so. So then we have over the network RG45 Ravenna AES67 network. We have 256 I/O channel. People will say, wow, why so many? One day, if you want to expand your Anubis, have a second Anubis or have another interface that's compatible, either merging one or one that's AES67, you can extend the I/Os, and Anubis can mix those I/Os and can as well redistribute them to other speaker sets. So basically, you get an Anubis, you would just want an Anubis, but one day you could use other interfaces and benefit from the Anubis internal mix engine and routing. And it's useful also to have the RG45, excuse me, connectivity, because you can go without extenders. You can go to 100 meters already. So you could imagine having in a attic the Anubis 100 meters from you and remotely controlling it with our web page, just powering over Ethernet, which also gives you, in case of ground loop issues, that can remove ground loops caused by bad circuitry, electric circuitry. So this is good, and we have the Kensington lock, so you can lock the Anubis here. In the front, we have two headphones, as you said, so you can use. You can use them for two independent headphone mixes. You can imagine the engineer with his headphones, and you can imagine somebody in a recording booth listening to its cue here. Or you can also use the headphones that for surround, because we've been asked about surround with Anubis, but it's possible with some cabling to have a balanced or unbalanced additional speaker set used here. And in the front, we have the instrument line, so you can take your guitar or bass jack and connect it directly in the Anubis and record your bass directly with Anubis, or after your few pedals and record in the DAW directly there. And you can also, they are also balanced lines here. So that means that you can, we had many users doing mastering and or external inserts work with it. So you can use, let's say, by example, it's just a use case, but you could have two cardioid microphone here, and you could decide to go through the output directly with the mix engine here through the external insert. So you can imagine a Pultec or levelizer, and come back in TRS input here in line in front. So this way you could record at the same time your pair of microphones directly in the DAW, and as well as the return process through the inserts here. So it's very convenient to have instrument or line here in front balance. So that's about it. I think we could go on and on, but I think it's Maurice. You can go ahead.
Cool, Ricardo. Thank you very much. I'm gonna move on now to the explaining you the menus, how this works. So the idea is that on your screen on the top left side next to Ricardo, you have
We'll
an
just do we see a few questions. We'll do all the question at the end, okay?
Yes, I see a few questions. I kind of replied already to some of
Okay.
them, especially about the monitoring. We're gonna go through the monitoring when we're there. So the idea is that we have the emulation of this touchscreen, and this is what you see on your top left screen, basically next to Ricardo on I think it makes that no that side there, and we're gonna go through that now. So first of all, the idea is that we have three main pages. So I have here, this is this merging button there, the white one. And then we have the two speaker buttons and two headphone buttons, and we come to the rest later. So this one, by clicking here, it goes through three pages. The first page is basically having my sources. And those sources, basically, I can select. Those sources could be, for example, a physical input. So this would be my microphone input 1 and 2. So it's 2 for the moment. I can make it 1 if I want to. But for the moment, it's 2. This would be, the next one would be the source of my line input, for example. And then I have one called Multi 7.1 and one called DAW Mac. So these are basically, obviously, streams coming from the outside, coming from my digital audio workstation. And here I can toggle from one to these different sources and listen to them. So obviously at one point, I would like perhaps to listen to my microphone input and to the sum of my workstation. So here I have my microphone input and my DAW. And this goes without latency. There is no latency because I have DSP in my device. And that means that I can mix all these different sources together and listen to them without having to go through a computer driver or whatever it is and create some latency in there. So I can find back, I find back this feeling of being right in time, either for a musician or either for a comedian or speaker or journalist who has the proper timing in his or her ears from what they do or what they say or what they play. Good. How do I select and configure those different sources? I simply press a little bit longer on this button there, and I go into settings. And I have many possibilities, but and they're very basic and obvious general meters, presets, and so on. But I'm gonna jump to sources. And in sources, I have those four sources that are already preset or that I prepared just before making the presentation. And obviously, I can either change them or I can create a new source. Let's create a new source. And this new source, for example, could be a type being either mono, stereo, or it could be, for example, a 3-1, I mean a 4 or 4-0, I mean 4-channel track, or 8-0, 8 channels, or it could be also something a bit higher up, let's say a 9-1 to make fun. Okay? And here, this is called source. I could say this is called my, let's call it like this, and let's call it stem. Stem, okay. Now it's called stem. It's a 9-1 stem. I can trim it if I want. And I can also here select what inputs I will use. So obviously I can use my physical inputs that are available here. So these are the analog inputs that I have on the device. But I can use obviously what's coming from the network. So obviously a 9.1 stem will come over the network. And when I say it comes over the network, it could come from a software, but it could also come from another hardware device sitting somewhere because it's a physical stream coming in. Then this stem here, I can move it up if I prefer having it in between them or below them or whatever. But if I go back to my normal view of sources, this stem is now here. And if I sum it, I can listen to it. So I can add stems, sorry, I can add sources the way I want. And my framework basically is this 256 by 256. And obviously here I'm just talking about inputs, they are outputs. So obviously this is the framework I'm working in. Now I will go to the next page, but before going, sorry, to the next page, I wanted to show you one thing. This is basically my microphone input. I will have obviously some pages or some settings to be able to increase, decrease my gain and so on. I will press again on there and I will go to mic pre and I will see that here I have my, let me just go back there. Whoops, sorry, just toggles here. As it is, I'm doing it with the mouse, but as it is a touch screen, I can swipe through those different menus here on my device. But now this is my input 1 and 2 of my Anubis. And so my input 1 and 2 that are here on the back, and that could be mic or line input. I see it here, mic or line, 48 volt, and I can change the gain with a knob. Okay, but I change it with the mouse, but I could change it with the knob because I have a hardware device. And now I could have an 80 hertz low cut, I could phase invert it, and here I can either pad, none, or boost, meaning I could have the 137 dB or dynamic range rather available. Now, obviously, if I have a pair of microphones for a recording in a whole, or two microphones for my guitars, or whatever it is, I can then link those guys together, and now they function together as a pair. And of course, with a delta respectful in terms of what I said before I paired them. Then, very important, I have a cuff mute and a lock. Obviously, the lock speaks for itself. The cuff mute is basically the idea, if I'm a musician, I'm a guitarist, I want to change my guitar in between a song and another, or a recording session and another, so I want to unplug and replug, and I don't want to have this conf going through everything and everywhere. So I can mute it, I change my guitar, and I unmute it, and I'm ready again. Or for commentary, people, comedians or journalists or people who do some vocal recording, some audio recording, they want to talk to each other, they want to say something, or they have to cough. That's why it's called a cough mute. I can briefly mute this and cough and unmute it, and then it's fine again. Obviously, this could be triggered by a GPI. Don't forget, I have a GPI here. So I could trigger this function and others, obviously, but this could be one of them that I can trigger from my GPI. Then I go to my page 2. And now this is exactly the same way of functioning with the phase invert, the gain, the linking, and so on. But this is now my input 3 and 4, where I can choose for line, in between line and in between instruments. And my input number 3 here, this is basically the gain about this Talkback microphone that is included in here. We have a few questions. What are the limits when getting external sources from AES network? Basically, to Igor, to reply to your question, the limits for the AES67 Dante network, the only limit, as far as I know, is basically if it's with a Dante AES67, it has to be in 48 kilohertz. That's the only limit. And to your second question, what is the risk if you mistake connect the signal like from keyboard to mic input? Well, like everywhere, it makes some noise. I mean,
and make sure you don't have the phantom, because you could break an analog circuitry if it goes directly in the keyboard.
Exactly. Good.
And a quick word, I will say a quick word about the boost. The boost in the preamp comes with our dual circuitry, and it allows us to have actually 12 dB boost, which is very convenient for ribbon cable mics, but it's also give us an astonishing gain range of 0 to 78 dB here, as you can go to 66 plus 12 dB. So basically, with the current dynamic, our current specification of 137 dB of dynamic range, it allows you also to record without the floor noise is so low that you don't have anymore to record very hot. I mean, you don't have to check if the input will be very next to clipping. You know, we have some range there, so you can record with safety at a lower gain input level.
This brings me to the page 2. We remember, or you will remember, that we've seen the different sources. Now I will move on to the mixer. And this is basically a mixer. So again, a real-time mixer, because I have some DSP in there. And now, so the faders you see moving, it's an emulation. Now it's nothing real. It's because it's a software emulation so that I can have it on the screen. And here again, like before, I can select the different sources. I can sum them so that I can sum them together. And most importantly, I can, for example, tick them and with the knob move or trim them as a stem. So it means that if it's a mono stem, it will be the mono channel. If it's a stereo stem, it will be the stereo channel. If it's a 7-1 stem like here, it will be all 8 channels that are trimmed going up and down. And then obviously I have my main button, and I see that I have the main gain that changes here on the right that I will move around. But that brings me to the next page where we have all our different speaker sets, phones, and cues, or headphones and cues. So we have basically 3 possibilities in terms of outputting the signal, and you will see the way it works and how those possibilities are, and they're subtle and they're very interesting. So to start with, we have a basic configuration here with 2 speaker sets and 2 headphones. So first of all, how they are functioning, to the setup I'm coming into 1 second, but how they are functioning, I have, for example, a speaker set A here, which will be a stereo, obviously, a speaker set B here, which will be a 5-1. So I could use output 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to do that. And here, for example, the first thing I would choose, for example, what those knobs are doing on the touch screen. Either mute, solo, solo X, polarity. That means that I could invert the polarity from the left and the right channel, for example, or whatever I want. I could clear it, go back to 0. Or solo them. Solo left surround, right surround, for example, and clear them. I have here also a reference level and a dim level. So the dim level will obviously dim from whatever I set, 20 dBs, or the reference level will bring me back, for instance, to minus 24 dB. This is what I set up for the speaker set. I can change all of these possibilities the way they go here by clicking again to the settings, going into the settings, and going to monitors this time, and change it there. So the 5-1 I had is called actually the Alt-3-4. So again, if I dislike this name, I can go here and just say simply 5-1. And so I'm happy with that. Then I have the possibility to choose the mode. We haven't seen that yet, but basically each of these monitors, can be either a speaker set, a headphone, or a cue. Now we're talking about the speaker set. We're going to see the headphone and the cue in a second. I can trim them. So that's the entire speaker set. I can define the bottom. So this is the bottom that is here. And then I can say here what type it is. So for the moment I said it's a 5-1, but I could make a 7-1.4, whatever it is. But I keep it 5-1 because so I can connect it physically to this output of my device. But I can also choose it, for example, to output it over the network to another hardware device. Then this is where it becomes very interesting. For example, I can, for example, have here the change for my left channel of the delay. So I can change the delay. I can also change the trim. So this is for one speaker. And then very nice, I can also EQ the output. So now this is the EQ on the output of my left channel of my 5-1. And I can change it. Obviously, here I'm using the mouse, but I could use it. I could use it also with my wheel, if I would be on my wheel. And I could say, okay, this is my left channel, this is the good one. I copy it, and then I bring it to my right channel here, and I say EQ, and now I paste it so that I have the same EQ for my left and my right channel. Obviously, I could flat it, and I could remove bands, and I can add bands also if I want. And so I can start to make EQs on the outputs of my Anubis, either for the speaker sets, but also for the headphones. So for the headphones, very basic. Again, I have my speaker set AB here, my stereo 5.1, and then I have my headphone 1 and 2. So for the moment, they're basically set to those outputs here for the moment, huh? But it's a copy basically of what I'm listening here with a different level. And obviously, if I listen to my B speaker set, I have here the down mix of my B speaker set that I can have mono, stereo, 2-1, 3-0, 3-1, quadro, and so on, and quad surround. But this is defined by the speaker set I'm into. If I press stereo, it will go to stereo. But if I listen to the same output on my headphone, obviously that will automatically make a down mix to stereo, as I just only have two speakers. And then I have a different volume for my headphone, obviously one, and a different volume for my headphone two. There was a question before about the reference level. If I go to the settings, and the reference level is, if I remember well, in here, and I can check, is that correct, Ricardo? No, it's not in here. My reference level.
In the settings, you can calibrate the ref levels or the dim level to your choice. So when you tap it, it will be your reference level.
Yes, so there we go. Excuse me, I was in the wrong menu. On the monitors, you have the monitors levels, and here, this is where you can set the max level, the ref level, and the dim level for all speakers.
It's one level before, it's under, it's one level.
Yeah, monitor levels here.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you, Ricardo. So this is now my speaker sets, and then I have my headphones, and you see here I have some speaker sets here also, and a Q1. So basically, this is because I have more than two speaker sets. I created a third one called C, and this is now a 7.1.4 speaker set. So here I have now my 7.1, so it makes 12 speakers. This is typically an Atmos configuration. And for that, obviously, I would need a switch and another device to be able to output it to speakers. So another AS67 device from merging or from another manufacturer to be able to trigger the speakers about this. But I can really, truly have my monitoring section basically until up to 22.2. And the Q here, this is then very interesting when I go to my sources. You will understand that in a second. If I move from my speaker set A to my speaker set B to my speaker set C to my headphone 1 and 2, the selection of the sources remains the same. This is normally what you want to like. But I have the possibility, by hitting Q, to have an output that goes then to, for example, a headphone of an artist, and who wants to have another mix or another sum of what they have in their headphone. So you see that now for Q1, the selection of the sum is instrument line 3 and the DAW. And for the others, it's those sums. So it is completely different on that. Can the AV headphone symbols be ABC headphones? Yes, basically those soft knobs basically are physically in here. So they will always be AB and headphone 1 and 2. But you could have a speaker set 3 on headphone 1 if you want. So you could change them inside the software. So going back to the monitoring section there, monitors, and going here to my Q1, for example, and here I say Q1. For the moment, it's a virtual key, but I could say, no, I want it to be my headphone 2. So if I say my headphone 2, this is now my Q output. Okay, so I can kind of trigger those things via the software, but obviously the hardware knobs will remain with the same picture on them. Good. Then the next thing, which is very important and interesting to see, is that if I press a little bit longer again and go, sorry, press a little longer again and go to those settings, I go a little bit lower here. First of all, I have talks. So this is how I manage the talkback, which input, and this is then linked to the button I have here on my Anubis. Basically, the talkback button is here, and I can latch it, auto latch it, and so on. I can dim it on the speakers if I want. And then a little bit lower, this is where I have my audio inputs that I can split my remote control of it. For the moment, they are split, so you're going to see it and understand it in 1 second. Is that I have my mic pre here, I have input where we've been before, input 1 and 2, remote control, input 3 and 4, remote control, the talkback, and then input 1 and 2, another remote control. So it means that somebody else could have a different gain for the same input, for the input microphone or for the line input. So this is then available as an option that you can activate or deactivate. For people who don't need it, they don't need to activate it, of course. And then a little bit below there, very important, I have triggers. And those triggers is basically the setup of my GPI. I have the GPI in. So this is basically the input signal, the pulse, for example, and I could say I want to speaker mute it, or I want to talk back, talk, for example. So my pedal will then link it. Can I have 3 talkback feeds for producer, operator, and composer having 3 mics on board? I have 2 talkback circuitries.
Yes,
So
indeed, we had to talk back circuitry in terms of controlling with switches or soft keys.
yes, so I can have 2 talkback circuitries, but perhaps the composer, the conductor, sorry, is it the conductor or is it the conductor or the composer? I guess it's the same person, if I understand you right.
Often it's the producer that talks to the conductor and the
Exactly.
main engineer that talks to the stage tech.
No, of course, but what I mean is that the conductor, because there the question is 3 microphones. So one could imagine that the conductor or composer has always an open mic, as it is in the room anyway, and it's connected to an input that you can then source and connect to the headphones. They might be certainly a possibility.
Or you can for sure get your own circuitry and a mic with an on-off button and use it for somebody there, you know.
That's the other possibility indeed. So moving a little bit further, one very interesting thing I think to show as well is that we have here a fantastic remote control. So obviously you have the device, and let me just remove the logo so that you see it perhaps a little bit better as well. There we go. I just removed the logo so that now you have the Anubis remote control that is down here. I just make, whoops, sorry, I closed it, that I didn't want to do just now. Excuse me for that. I open it again. There we go. Yes, I have 2 screens, and so obviously it is on the other screen, and I have to bring it forward to this device. So it is here, and I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller like this so that we can still see each other. And this is basically the remote control on a web browser. So everyone can access this web browser on a Mac, on a PC, on whatever you want, on a laptop like here, on a computer, on a desktop, or on an iPad, I mean, or a tablet. So the idea of this remote control is that you have exactly the same that I have here on my Anubis hardware. But then you have everything on one hand. So it means that you can very quickly select your different stems, sources, but you can very quickly also, if you go to your 7.1, select, it could be a touchscreen, for example, select your different speaker sets you want, and you reset them, for example, very quickly as well. You have everything on one page, the main volume, and then, last but not least, you could toggle to a second page and you have your preamps. So this could be then also when you can create groups also that, for example, those two guys function together, and so that they're in a purple group, and those two guys that could be on another group like this, make something silly like here, and all of them will work together here that way. No, it doesn't make sense what I'm doing like this. So that they are all working together on that aspect. And last but not least, very important, is that I can save those presets. I mean, I have presets, and I can save presets either locally on the device or either as a file. But that means also that my little Anubis, that is sometimes used in my studio, sometimes outside, sometimes in different configurations. Well, those different configurations can be saved, and very quickly I can recall them, and then go straight to work as I pre-configured for them. Uh, to your question, Igor, this is a controller for Horus inputs. Not yet, but this will come where you will be able to use that. But obviously, you have the web browser. So you can use your Horus web browser inputs, and you have it straight away also on the Anubis next to each other.
And it's obviously a mixer for Horus input, so you can bring in Horus input microphones there. When I saw the talkback question here, you have the physical button on Anubis that can control the talkback built-in, but that physical button can control also a mic that would be connected to the Horus. And with the GPIO, that's the thing, you can have a switch for the conductor. The producer actually will have the switch next to the producer, and he will press the switch to open and close his mic. So that's all part of there. So you definitely have two mics, two talkback possible, but it doesn't. The two talkback don't necessarily need to be from Anubis.
Okay, I think we walked a little bit through everything. Did I forget something, Ricardo? Do you want to add something more?
No, I can add simply that well, what we presented is the firmware that's coming up anytime soon, but it's available for everybody that will update to the latest firmware. And that Anubis today is based on the monitoring mission, but it does much more than just the monitoring mission, because today you can benefit from the internal mixer either if you do broadcasting or if you are a musician at home. You record your instrument directly in, and you have a super high latency from the DAW. Then you can sum with the internal input and benefit immediately from the Anubis built-in mixer and DSP engine. So it's a very powerful device. And for those who have interrogation, we have drivers for the Mac and for the Windows. And as you said, I think at the beginning, we have this new driver that has multi Azure client support. And
No, I didn't mention anything about this yet.
Okay, but we have a new driver with WDM support and all that. I think it will be part of another presentation in a week or so. I think, Maurice?
Yes. So for the moment, for you to let you know, is that this device comes with if you purchase it, comes with a DC power supply. And to connect it to any type of workstation, either Mac or PC, you will have the virtual sound card going with it. So it means you can make a one-to-one connection either for Mac, so that you can aggregate it in your Mac, in your core audio basically. And for PC, it will come with an Azure driver and a multi-Azure driver with VDM, so that you can connect all of that together as well. One thing, obviously, you have to be aware, but this is normal with every type of device today, is that you have to check on our website with the download pages which operating system is supported. We operate everything as much as possible when it's available, but there's always, like everyone, there's always a bit of a latency when something is new. We have to test it first and then propose it for its availability.
I see a question about the Mac and the VAD we support already today, Catalina 10.15.2. It's just that with the 10.15.4 and 5 now upcoming, we have to have some time before certifying those latest OS. As you will see, that the audio community also is struggling to keep up with all the Apple changes in their OS. So I think follow our guideline now, and as as you will see, many audio manufacturers don't recommend to always put the ladle Catalina. The only problem is that sometimes you buy a Mac and it comes with it.
Well, when you buy it, you have no choice sometimes.
Yes, but the driver can be installed. We have a beta driver that we want to release at the end of the month. So a bunch of stuff is coming up this month.
So thank you, Ricardo. One last thing to answer a question is about filter slopes and bass management. So if I go to my settings and I go to my monitors and I pick up the 5.1, for example, here I can go down. You remember this is where I have my output connected, my trim, my delay, my EQ. And below I have my bass management. So this one is enabled. I have a crossover frequency that I can select, of course, and a filter slope that I can go 12 dBs per octaves, or can I change this before I could change it? No. Can I change this, Ricardo?
What's the question?
The filter slope of the bass management.
On
Normally
a
I can.
speaker set that has a that has a it has to be a point something. It has to have a sub.
Obviously,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
Yes, I am. Yeah, yeah. But
yeah,
let me
yeah.
go here.
Some depending of the number of channels or I think EQ's active, you can be limited sometimes with the number of slope available.
Yeah, let me go to a very basic one or another one. Let's make this one a 2.1. There we go. No EQs, bass management. Let's enable it. And then the filter slope. No, I'm 12 dBs per octave. But I think we can go up to 18. I think I've seen it.
Check. I don't remember by heart, but it could be the emulator also. I don't know.
I think you can go up to 18, if I remember well by heart. It is possible that also this is the web app here that doesn't allow me to do that. Do you see something?
I'm like you.
You're doing it
Maybe
on yours?
you know what? You know what, Maurice?
Yes.
I think there's a small issue with the emulator and the latest
That's
prototype.
exactly what I was thinking also. So
So
I'm just trying to make it here on my device.
no, I had the
Yeah.
device open, so the
I show
emulator
it
is
I
not
show it to the
working.
camera. So here you see this is a little bug on the Element and the emulator, but I can go from 6 to 36 dB per octave on the output. So here it works on the real hardware. Anyway, I think that we talked about everything we wanted to talk about. What do you think,
Yeah,
Ricardo?
I think
Good.
so. And I see another question about the EQ, but the EQ, the virtual keyboard, the renaming of the sources and monitors and presets and preamps and the ordering change of the sources and monitors, it's all coming up in the 1.1 firmware that's currently at its final release candidate stage. So we, as I explained before, at the end of the month, every Anubis user can benefit from these new features.
And to answer to the question to Tibor about ambisonics, ambisonics in terms of inputs, physical inputs in here or monitor sections are not yet supported. These are discrete spot monitors.
And I think there was a question about can I have three different level speaker sets? You can have speaker set with, we have trims for every speaker set, so you can trim the speaker sets of your monitors actually to the level you wish to have and have control over that.
Okay.
Or use cues to make a completely new, but cues have different properties than speaker set and headphones. It's very important. That's the small thing. People have to be clear that there's three types of monitors: speaker sets, headphones, and cues, and they each have their properties because the headphones will have the crossfeed that you will never use with the speakers if you're a speaker set, which will have the bass management and other features. So basically, it's important to be clear on that. I think it's the weekend time now.
Exactly. We wish you all a very good evening and talk to you soon and stay tuned. And if you have other questions, please make it either on the YouTube channel or you can make it via email or the standard communication ways. Have a great evening.
Exactly.
Bye.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
Ricardo.
Bye. Bye, Maurice.